The air in the apartment always seemed to hum with a quiet sort of contentment, a gentle rhythm that had lulled Clara and Daniel into a comfortable, almost predictable existence for the better part of a decade. They were a couple carved from the ordinary fabric of American life, both hovering in their late 30s, early 40s. Daniel, a software engineer with a quiet intensity, and Clara, a graphic designer whose creative spirit often bubbled just beneath her calm demeanor. Their one-bedroom apartment on the quieter side of a bustling Seattle neighborhood was more than just four walls. It was their sanctuary, a testament to shared dreams, late-night conversations, and the cozy chaos of two lives intertwined. Every nook, every cranny, held a memory, a story, a whisper of their journey together. Or so they thought. It began subtly, as these things often do. Not with a bang, but with a series of almost imperceptible shifts in the familiar. Clara, with her artist's eye for detail, was the first to notice. It wasn't a structural change, nothing glaring like a new crack in the plaster or a sagging floorboard. It was something far more insidious, a disquieting sense of more space than there should be. A phantom echo in the silence that wasn't quite right. She'd dismiss it, of course, attributing it to an overactive imagination fueled by a long day of client revisions. Daniel, ever the pragmatist, would offer a comforting arm around her, perhaps suggest she was just tired. "It's a small place, honey," he'd murmur. "You know every inch of it." And she did, or thought she did. Their apartment, though modest, was perfectly laid out. A compact living room that doubled as Daniel's occasional workspace, a small but functional kitchen where Clara whipped up gourmet meals, and their single, beloved bedroom. The bedroom was the heart of their home, a space of warmth and intimacy, filled with soft lamplight and the scent of old books. A built-in bookshelf lined one wall, reaching from floor to ceiling, packed tight with their combined literary treasures. It was against this very wall that the first true anomaly appeared. One crisp autumn evening, a particularly strong gust of wind rattled the old window panes. A book, a heavy, leather-bound edition of Melville, shifted precariously on a higher shelf. Clara, reaching up to steady it, felt a peculiar give in the wall behind the bookshelf. Not a wobble or a creak, but a distinct give, as if the solid plaster wasn't as solid as it seemed. Her fingers, tracing the edge of the shelf, brushed against something cold and smooth, an unnatural coolness against the rough texture of the wall. She pulled her hand back, a prickle of unease running up her arm. She told Daniel, of course. He, being Daniel, rationalized it immediately. "Old building, sweetie. Probably just settling. Happens." He'd even tapped the wall a few times, a reassuring thud. But to Clara, the thud felt hollow. The feeling persisted. It wasn't just in the bedroom now. It was in the hushed quiet of the living room, in the way the air sometimes felt oddly heavy near the kitchen, in the almost imperceptible drafts that seemed to come from nowhere. Clara found herself walking around the apartment with a new, almost obsessive focus, her eyes scanning, her fingers tracing the lines where wall met floor, where ceiling met wall. She was searching for something, though she couldn't articulate what. It was a compulsion, a gnawing suspicion that something fundamental about their shared space was wrong. One rainy Saturday, Daniel was engrossed in a new coding project, his headphones on, oblivious to the world. Clara, with time on her hands and the strange feeling gnawing at her, decided to tackle the bookshelf. It was an arduous task, moving hundreds of books, each one dusted, each one briefly considered before being placed in a stack on the floor. As she worked her way down, her hands covered in a fine layer of dust, she reached the lower shelves, the ones less frequently accessed. And there it was. Not a crack, not a hole, but a faint, almost invisible seam in the plaster, just behind the bottom shelf. It was expertly disguised, perfectly aligned with the natural imperfections of the old wall. But now that she was looking for it, now that she felt it, it was undeniably there. A line, a hidden division. Her heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drum against her ribs. She pressed her fingers along the seam. It didn't budge. She tried to pry at it gently, then with more force, her nails scraping against the surface. Nothing. It was as if the wall was a single, impenetrable surface, yet her senses screamed otherwise. There was something behind this. She knew it with a certainty that chilled her to the bone. Daniel, finally emerging from his coding trance, stretched and yawned, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing, love? Decluttering?" He chuckled, oblivious. Clara, her face pale, turned to him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and dawning comprehension. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the refrigerator. "Come here. Look at this." He walked over, a faint smile on his lips, then saw her expression. His smile faltered. He knelt beside her, following her trembling finger to the faint line. He looked closer, his brow furrowing. He tapped it. Sounded solid, but then again it had sounded solid before. He ran his hand over it, feeling nothing out of the ordinary. "Clara, it's just plaster. An old repair, maybe?" "No," she insisted, her voice gaining a desperate edge. "It's not. Feels different, colder. And there's a draft, Daniel. Always a draft, even with the windows shut." She pointed to a tiny, almost imperceptible gap between the wall and the old wooden baseboard. He knelt closer, his nose almost touching the wall, and took a deep sniff. A faint, almost musty smell, like forgotten things, reached his nostrils. He had never noticed it before. A strange, unsettling quiet descended upon the apartment. The comfortable hum of their life seemed to falter, replaced by the thumping of Clara's heart and Daniel's increasingly rapid breath. They spent the rest of the day in a state of suspended disbelief, their initial attempts at rationalization crumbling under the weight of Clara's insistent feeling. They knocked, they listened, they even tried shining a flashlight into the tiniest cracks, but the wall remained stubbornly unyielding. Yet the conviction grew. There was something more to this apartment than they knew. Something hidden, something else. As evening fell, casting long, eerie shadows across the living room, Daniel, with a newfound determination born of Clara's unwavering certainty, went to the toolbox. He returned with a small hammer and a thin, sturdy chisel. Clara watched, her breath hitched in her throat, as he carefully, methodically, began to chip away at the plaster along the faint seam. Each tiny piece of plaster that fell to the floor felt like a fragment of their comfortable reality crumbling away. The sound was surprisingly loud in the silence. A sharp, unnerving tap, tap, tap. After what felt like an eternity, a small section of plaster gave way. Not just chipped, but came off in a clean, neat rectangle, revealing not brick or drywall, but a thin, rough-hewn wooden panel beneath. Daniel carefully prized it away, and a gust of stale, cold air, carrying with it that distinct musty scent, wafted into their living room. Behind the panel, in the dim light, was not another room, not a void, but a narrow, dark opening. An impossibly narrow hallway, barely wide enough for one person, stretched into absolute blackness. Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Daniel, his face a mask of shock, stared into the darkness. Their one-bedroom apartment, their cozy, familiar one-bedroom apartment, held a secret that had been there all along, hidden in plain sight, waiting for them to finally see. The feeling of dread that had been a faint whisper now surged, a chilling roar in their ears. What lay beyond that darkness? And more importantly, why had it been hidden? This wasn't just a structural anomaly. This felt like a deliberate act. The comfortable hum of their life had not just faltered. It had been shattered, replaced by the terrifying unknown that lay just beyond a hidden wall. Their story, the one they thought they knew, was about to take a turn into a terrifying, shadowed labyrinth. The narrow, dark opening wasn't just a physical void. It was a gaping maw that swallowed their comfortable reality whole. Clara and Daniel stood transfixed, the chisel and hammer lying forgotten at their feet. The stale, musty air that emanated from the darkness tasted of decay and forgotten time, carrying with it a faint, almost metallic tang that prickled the back of Clara's throat. It was the scent of a long-held secret, now breathing its first breath into their pristine home. Daniel, usually so composed, felt a tremor run through him. His pragmatic mind, which always sought logical explanations, found itself in uncharted territory, confronted by the utterly illogical. How could an entire, seemingly substantial space exist within their tiny one-bedroom apartment, undetected for so long? "Daniel, what is this?" Clara's voice was a fragile whisper, barely louder than the frantic thumping of her own heart. Her hand, still covering her mouth, trembled visibly. She looked at him, her eyes wide, pleading for an answer that he simply didn't have. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the rough, cold edges of the newly exposed opening. The darkness within seemed to deepen, an inky blackness that defied the dim light spilling from their living room. He instinctively pulled his hand back, a shiver tracing its way up his spine. They spent the next few minutes in a silent, horrified dance around the gaping hole. Their initial shock slowly gave way to a creeping dread, followed by a surge of desperate curiosity. It was a primal urge, the need to know what lay beyond the veil of the unknown. Daniel, always the one to face a problem head-on, regardless of how unsettling, finally reached for his phone. The beam of the flashlight cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating a path into what appeared to be an impossibly narrow, short hallway, leading to a door. A door! In their apartment. A door they had never known existed. The door was made of dark, heavy wood, a stark contrast to the modern, light-colored doors in the rest of their apartment. It had no handle, no knob, just a single, rusted iron ring fixed firmly in the center. Its surface was marred with scratches and what looked like old, dried stains, too dark to discern in the faint light. A wave of unease washed over Clara. This wasn't just an extra room. This was something old, something deliberately concealed. The air around it felt colder, heavier, charged with an unspoken history. Daniel, driven by a strange mix of fear and an almost scientific need for discovery, reached for the iron ring. It was cold and rough beneath his fingers. He pulled. It didn't budge. He pulled harder, bracing himself. With a groan of ancient wood and a sharp, metallic screech, the door slowly, agonizingly, began to swing inward. A fresh wave of the musty, metallic scent assaulted their senses, stronger now, tinged with something else, something almost earthy. Beyond the door, the flashlight beam danced, revealing not another cramped space, but a full-sized room. A bedroom. It was sparse, almost bare, yet undeniably a bedroom. A single, rusted metal bed frame stood against one wall, its springs exposed, the mattress long gone. A rickety wooden nightstand stood beside it, empty. Dust, thick and undisturbed, coated every surface like a shroud. But it wasn't the dust or the emptiness that sent a fresh jolt of terror through Clara. It was the other items. On the nightstand, beside an old, yellowed paperback, lay a child's wooden toy soldier, its painted face faded, one arm missing. And leaning against the wall, tucked almost out of sight, was a small, worn wooden rocking horse, its paint chipped, its eyes fixed in an unsettling, unblinking stare. A child's room, in their apartment, a room they had never known about. Clara felt a sickening lurch in her stomach. A child? Who? Why? The questions swirled in her mind, a dizzying maelstrom of confusion and fear. This wasn't just a hidden room. This was a hidden life, and the implications were terrifying. They had bought this apartment 10 years ago. It had been described as a simple one-bedroom. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable, had lived there for decades. She had been sweet, if a little eccentric, never mentioning any such hidden spaces. This is impossible, Daniel breathed, his voice hoarse. He stepped into the room, the dust puffing up around his feet with each hesitant step. Clara, though terrified, followed him, drawn by an irresistible, morbid fascination. The air inside was heavy, thick with the silence of years, a silence that felt less like absence and more like a presence. As Daniel's flashlight beam swept across the walls, a flicker of something caught his eye. Scratches. Not random marks, but deliberate, shallow etchings near the bottom of the wall, almost at floor level. He knelt, illuminating them. They looked like tally marks, countless little lines, crudely carved, stretching across a significant portion of the wall. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. A chilling realization dawned on Clara. This wasn't just a child's room. This was a place where a child had been kept. For a very, very long time. A cold dread seeped into her bones. Her imagination, usually a vibrant tapestry of colors and shapes, now painted a chilling tableau of a child, trapped, counting the endless days, scrawling their existence onto the walls of their hidden prison. Who was this child? And what happened to them? The pleasant, predictable hum of their lives had been replaced by the haunting echoes of a forgotten tragedy. They spent hours in that room, their initial horror slowly morphing into a desperate search for answers. They found nothing else. No names, no dates, no clues. Just the dusty, silent relics of a child's long-lost presence. The toy soldier, the rocking horse, the etched tally marks, each a silent scream from the past. When they finally emerged, exhausted and emotionally drained, the living room seemed alien, its familiarity stripped away, replaced by the chilling awareness of what lay just beyond their bookshelf. The next few days were a blur of restless nights and anxious days. Sleep offered no escape. Their dreams were haunted by the image of the hidden room, the rocking horse, and the countless tally marks. They spoke in hushed tones, almost afraid the walls would listen. They considered calling the police, but what would they say? "We found a secret room in our apartment, and it looks like a child was held there." Without any concrete evidence of a crime, they feared being dismissed as delusional. And deep down, a part of them, a primal, protective instinct, wanted to uncover the truth themselves. This wasn't just some historical oddity. This was a part of their home, a part of their lives now. Daniel, ever the methodical one, began researching the building's history, digging into old city records, property deeds, anything that might shed light on its past. Clara, meanwhile, found herself drawn back to the hidden room, compelled to spend time in its eerie silence, hoping it would yield more secrets. She'd sit on the dusty floor, tracing the tally marks with her finger, feeling a profound, inexplicable connection to the unknown child. She started noticing subtle details she'd missed before: a faint, almost invisible outline on the wall where a small shelf might have been, a tiny, almost microscopic chip in the plaster near the ceiling that looked suspiciously like a peephole. A peephole from their side of the wall, from their living room. The realization sent a fresh wave of nausea through her. Someone, perhaps Mrs. Gable or someone before her, had been watching the child. From their living room, from a place where they now lived their own lives, oblivious. The comfortable hum of their shared existence now felt like a cruel deception, built upon a foundation of unspeakable secrets. The walls that had once offered comfort now felt like silent, complicit witnesses. One evening, as Daniel pored over old blueprints he'd managed to unearth from the city archives, he let out a sharp gasp. Clara rushed to his side. His finger was pointing at a faint, almost erased line on the blueprint, a line that extended from what was labeled as the master bedroom, their current living room, and then, bafflingly, into an unlabeled void marked utility access. "Clara," he said, his voice strained, "this blueprint is from 1952. The building was constructed in 1950. But look at this wall. It wasn't originally here." He traced the faint line that represented the wall with his finger. "It was added after construction. This wasn't a utility access. This was part of the original living space. Someone built this wall. Someone intentionally sealed off a part of the apartment. And they did it just 2 years after the building was completed." The revelation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Not just a hidden room, but a room deliberately created to be hidden. A part of the original floor plan, excised and sealed away. The implications were chilling. This wasn't an accidental discovery or an old repair. This was a meticulously planned act of concealment. The question wasn't just who lived in that room or what happened to them, but who did this and why. The whispers from the hidden depths were growing louder, transforming their sanctuary into a haunted, unsettling labyrinth. And they were only just beginning to truly understand the sinister nature of the secrets their seemingly ordinary apartment held. The revelation that the hidden room wasn't an original part of the apartment, but a deliberate, later addition, struck Clara and Daniel with the force of a physical blow. The air in their living room, once a comforting envelope of shared life, now felt thin, charged with a sinister energy. The quaint, old-world charm of their building seemed to peel away, revealing layers of calculated deceit. It wasn't just a discovery. It was an accusation, a silent condemnation whispered from the very walls they called home. Daniel, his usual methodical calm shattered, became obsessed with the blueprints. He spread them out on their dining table, the paper crinkling with age, tracing the faint, almost invisible lines that told a story more horrifying than any fiction. He cross-referenced names, searched online archives, and delved into the city's obscure historical societies. Clara, meanwhile, found herself drawn back to the hidden room with an almost magnetic pull. The chill within its dusty confines no longer felt just physical. It was the chill of a profound wrong, a silent plea echoing through the decades. She found herself talking to the empty space, whispering questions into the oppressive silence, her fingers tracing the endless tally marks, a macabre calendar of a lost life. One particularly grim afternoon, Daniel burst into the hidden room, his face ashen, a thick, leather-bound ledger clutched in his trembling hands. "Clara, I found it, in the city archives. A ledger from the building's original developer, back in the 1950s. His voice was barely a whisper, strained with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "It details all the modifications, the contractors, the dates. And this entry here." His finger, rigid with tension, pointed to a meticulously written note. The entry was dated precisely 2 years after the building's completion. It detailed the internal reconstruction of Unit 3B, per client request, for creation of a secure, soundproofed storage area. The name listed as the client was Evelyn Thorne. Clara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Evelyn Thorne. The name rang a faint, unsettling bell, a distant echo from something she'd heard or read. Daniel, anticipating her thoughts, spoke, his voice heavy. Evelyn Thorne. She was Mrs. Gable's mother, the previous owner. Mrs. Gable inherited this apartment from her. Evelyn was a prominent figure back then, very private, very reclusive. He paused, his eyes meeting Clara's, a terrible understanding dawning between them. "This wasn't a storage area, Clara. They built this wall for her, to hide something." The pieces, disjointed and terrifying, began to click into place. The soundproofing, the deliberately sealed entrance, the false facade, it all pointed to one chilling conclusion. The child, whose existence was etched in tally marks on the wall, had not just been held captive, but had been deliberately and meticulously hidden by Evelyn Thorne. But why? Their search intensified, no longer just for answers about the hidden room, but about Evelyn Thorne herself. They unearthed old newspaper clippings, faded photographs, and snippets of society gossip. Evelyn Thorne had been a woman of considerable wealth and influence, known for her sharp intellect but also for her severe, unyielding demeanor. She had never married, never had any known children. Yet this room, the true climax, the terrifying confrontation with the past, came not from a dramatic revelation in the room itself, but from a dusty, forgotten box tucked away in the deepest corner of their own apartment's storage closet. A box they'd inherited from Mrs. Gable. It was filled with old family photographs, mementos, and letters. As Clara sorted through them, a peculiar photograph caught her eye. It was black and white, slightly creased, taken in what looked like the 1950s. It showed a stern-faced Evelyn Thorne, much younger, sitting on a park bench. And beside her, clutching a small wooden doll, was a little girl. A girl with large, haunted eyes, dressed in old-fashioned clothes. The girl in the picture had the same distinctive, almost ethereal quality that Clara had imagined for the child who had counted the days in the hidden room. Then, she found the letter, tucked beneath the photograph, a fragile, yellowed envelope, addressed simply to "My dearest Eleanor." It was written in a delicate, looping script, clearly Evelyn Thorne's handwriting. Clara's hands trembled as she pulled out the letter, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The letter began, "My dearest Eleanor, I know you must hate me. I know you resent the choices I've made, the life I've been forced to create for you. But you must understand, my sweet girl, it was the only way. For your own good, for the family's honor. Your father, he was a mistake, a scandal, something that could never see the light of day. I couldn't bear to give you up, to send you away to an orphanage, to let you be raised by strangers. You are my blood, my flesh, my secret, precious burden. I try to visit you every day, my little bird, to bring you what little comfort I can. I watch you through the peephole. I hear your gentle murmurs, your quiet songs. It breaks my heart that I cannot hold you, cannot raise you as a mother should. But this is safer. Here you are protected from the harsh judgment of the world, from the whispers and the shame. Here you are safe from those who would take you, who would expose our secret. I know the space is small, my love. I know the darkness must feel endless. But one day, Eleanor, one day I will be strong enough. One day, I will find a way to bring you out into the sun, to give you the life you deserve. Until then, you must be brave. You must count the days, my little one, and know that each tally mark brings us closer to your freedom. You are not forgotten. You are loved in secret always." The letter ended abruptly, unsigned, a tear stain marring the parchment. Clara dropped the letter, her hand flying to her mouth, stifling a choked sob. Eleanor, the child had a name, and the mother, the monstrous, loving mother, was Evelyn Thorne. The secure, soundproof storage area was a prison for her own daughter, born of a scandalous affair, hidden away to preserve the family's reputation. The peephole Clara had noticed in the hidden room, a faint chip on the wall, was confirmed. Evelyn had been watching her own child waste away in the darkness, all while maintaining the facade of a respected, reclusive socialite. Daniel, who had read the letter over her shoulder, staggered back, his face a mask of horror. "My God!" he whispered. "My God!" The sheer, unadulterated cruelty, mixed with a twisted, desperate love, was a revelation so shocking it stole the breath from their lungs. The story they had pieced together, fragment by chilling fragment, was far worse than anything they could have imagined. This wasn't just a hidden room. It was a tomb built by a mother for her living child. The climax of their discovery was not a violent confrontation, but this quiet, devastating insight into a woman's desperate act of shame and perceived protection. The weight of Eleanor's lost life, trapped in the confines of that room, pressed down on them, suffocating. They looked at each other, their faces streaked with tears, a shared burden settling upon their souls. They had found the second bedroom, yes, but they had also unearthed a tragedy of unimaginable proportions, a testament to a dark secret buried not just beneath plaster and wood, but beneath layers of social expectation and familial shame. The cozy sanctuary they had once cherished now felt like a mausoleum, its walls echoing with the ghost of a child who never knew the sun. And now, the true burden of this terrible knowledge fell upon them. What would they do with Eleanor's story? The letter lay between them, a fragile, yellowed testament to a hidden cruelty, a twisted maternal love, and a life tragically lost. The sheer weight of it, the cold, stark reality of Eleanor's existence within their very home, had settled upon Clara and Daniel like a shroud. The cozy chaos they had once cherished now felt like a grotesque parody, built upon the silent screams of a child. They couldn't unsee the hidden room, couldn't unread the letter, couldn't unknow the truth about Evelyn Thorne and her secret daughter. Their world, once neatly contained within familiar walls, had expanded into a labyrinth of shadows and unanswered questions, demanding resolution. The immediate impulse was to expose it all, to call the authorities, to tear down the remaining plaster, to bring Eleanor's story into the light. But a deeper, more profound sense of responsibility settled over them. This wasn't just a crime to be reported. It was a ghost to be appeased, a wrong to be righted, and a memory to be honored. They realized that the true resolution wasn't about punishment for Evelyn Thorne, who was long dead, but about finally giving Eleanor the dignity and recognition she had been denied. They started small and intimately. The first thing they did was to carefully remove the remaining sections of the hidden wall. Not with the frantic chipping of earlier, but with a respectful, almost reverent slowness. As the last bits of plaster crumbled, the hidden room was no longer a secret void but an open, albeit still unsettling, extension of their apartment. The air within it, once stale and oppressive, slowly began to mingle with the fresh air from their living room, as if Eleanor's spirit was finally able to breathe. Daniel meticulously documented everything. He photographed the tally marks, the rocking horse, the toy soldier. He compiled all the research on Evelyn Thorne, cross-referencing her known movements with the timeline of the hidden room's construction. Clara, meanwhile, found solace in the artistic. She began to sketch, to paint, to give form to the haunting image of Eleanor that had taken root in her mind. She imagined the child, small and brave, enduring the endless days, her tiny hands scratching marks on the wall, fueled by a mother's cruel, desperate promise of freedom. Their daily lives, once so predictable, were now irrevocably changed. The hidden room, no longer hidden, stood as a constant, somber reminder. They considered turning it into a guest room, perhaps a study, but the echoes of Eleanor were too strong. Instead, they decided to dedicate it. They cleaned it with painstaking care, removing decades of dust and grime, but left the tally marks untouched, preserving them as a permanent, chilling memorial. They brought in a single comfortable armchair, a soft lamp, and a small, delicate vase for fresh flowers. It became a quiet space, a sanctuary within their sanctuary, dedicated to the memory of the little girl who had lived and suffered within its confines. They never spoke of it to their friends or family in detail, finding the truth too horrifying, too personal to share casually. How do you explain that your beautiful, quaint apartment holds the ghost of a child prisoner? The weight of their secret became a shared burden, deepening their bond in a way that nothing else ever could. It was a silent covenant, a pact to honor Eleanor's tragic legacy. Daniel, driven by a need to ensure such a travesty never happened again, took his research a step further. He used his engineering skills to build a comprehensive database of historic property records, cross-referencing architectural plans with known residents and anomalies. He dedicated his free time to advocating for more transparent disclosure laws in real estate, particularly for older buildings, hoping to prevent any other dark secrets from remaining buried. He worked quietly, behind the scenes, a silent sentinel against hidden horrors. Clara, through her art, found her voice. She started a series of abstract paintings, their colors dark and brooding, yet punctuated with flashes of light and hope. She never explicitly revealed the story of Eleanor, but the raw emotion, the themes of confinement, hope, and the search for light within darkness, resonated deeply with those who saw her work. Her art became a silent monument, a way to tell Eleanor's story to the world, without ever speaking her name aloud. She even incorporated subtle, almost imperceptible elements that hinted at the tally marks, the rocking horse, the peephole, details that only she and Daniel would ever truly understand. The resolution wasn't a neat, tied-up package. There was no grand reveal to the public, no trial, no justice served in the traditional sense. Evelyn Thorne was long gone, and Eleanor, her fate forever sealed by the walls that had held her, could not be brought back. The ending was, in its own way, melancholic, yet imbued with a quiet sense of purpose. Clara and Daniel's apartment remained their home, but it was now a home forever marked by the indelible imprint of a past tragedy. It was a place of comfort, yes, but also a place of perpetual remembrance, a subtle, constant reminder of Eleanor, the forgotten child. Sometimes, in the dead of night, when the apartment was still and silent, Clara would swear she could hear it. A faint, almost imperceptible creak, like the gentle rocking of a small wooden horse, or a whisper, carried on the faintest draft, a whisper of a child's name, Eleanor. It wasn't a terrifying sound, not anymore. It was a quiet echo, a reminder that they had found her, acknowledged her, and perhaps, in their own way, set her free. They had found the second bedroom, a place of unspeakable sorrow, but in doing so, they had also found a deeper understanding of human cruelty, resilience, and the enduring power of a secret, once brought to light, to reshape the lives of those who uncover it. And that, my friends, is the chilling tale of the second bedroom. A story that reminds us that sometimes, the most profound mysteries aren't found in ancient ruins or distant lands, but in the very homes we inhabit, hidden just beyond the familiar. If the story resonated with you, if it sent a shiver down your spine and made you look a little closer at your own walls, then I encourage you to like this video to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tales of the unexplained and the unsettling. And make sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the hidden corners of human experience. Thank you for watching and stay curious.